Thank you all for being here. Thank our participants today for helping make this event possible. And certainly thank you to our staff for helping put together this event, in particular Tom Achilles, Chris Towner, Mark Oldroyd, and many others that made this event possible. I'm going to be very brief. We've got a busy agenda here for this event, so I'll be brief to kick us off before handing it over to our co-chairs to start off this event. But I just want to give a little bit of very brief background and context about the McCrery-Pomeroy SSDI Solutions Initiative. You'll hear more about that initiative over the course of the event today. But just as some background, our organization first launched the McCrery-Pomeroy SSDI Solutions Initiative almost 5 years ago. Its purpose was and remains to put forward a range of ideas that can improve the SSDI program and other programs for people with disabilities. The project commissioned 13 papers on a range of topics, including improving early intervention, increasing workforce attachment, as well as improving program administration and program integrity, and a range of other issue areas. These ideas were well received amongst policymakers. You'll hear more about that today. The ideas were also published into a full volume book, which is available outside for purchase. Help us get it back on the New York Times bestseller list, please. We were fortunate enough to launch a second phase of this initiative last year, where we commissioned another 6 papers on a range of topics, some of which are direct follow-ons to provide more specifics on the ideas commissioned in the first volume of this project. And those summaries, those papers, you should have in your packets, and there are also some select copies of the full papers available outside as well as on our website that I encourage you to look at. But aside from the project's purpose of putting forward these ideas, a broader purpose of the initiative is to encourage productive discussion and conversations on this vitally important program and vitally important policy area. That's what this event is about today. And again, thank you all for being here. So with that, I'm going to, in a minute, hand it over to our co-chairs. Just very brief housekeeping items. This event is being live streamed. You can tweet it. Hashtag is SSDI Solutions. Encourage folks to do that. And with that, it's my honor to be able to introduce our co-chairs, Jim McCrery and Earl Pomeroy. On behalf of our staff, it's just been an incredible privilege and honor to have their experience and leadership on these issues help guide our initiative. They will be familiar to those of you who work in disability policy. Both have distinguished careers in public service. Both served together in Congress, including as chairman of the Social Security Subcommittee. And so it is a great honor to thank them for being leaders of our initiative. With that, please join me in welcoming Jim McCrery and Earl Pomeroy to the stage.
Good morning. The House of Representatives is out today. Now, before that engenders even more eye-rolling, yet another recess. The reason is good. On this, the 75th anniversary of D-Day, there were so many members that wanted to participate in the commemoration, the memory of this event in France, that they closed the House. They weren't going to have votes with so many missing. I think that's to their credit. I think for our purposes, we're not gathered on this beautiful manicured cemetery lawn looking and considering the sacrifice of those 75 years ago, but we're in our own way serving, I think, up an appropriate memorial. The discussion of interesting policy ideas in a free and robust democracy, carrying on very much the best elements of the foundation of freedom, the United States of America. So maybe you think that's a little bit of a grandiose opening, but very much on my thoughts as I come here on this day, this important day, representing 75 years from D-Day. So it's Washington, a place where we have beautiful culture, a place where we from time to time have entertaining sports, and a place where ideas are discussed, elevated, torn down, and sometimes implemented. And that's what we're about today. The SSDI initiative, I was attracted to it from the very beginning. When Ed Lorenzen, our late friend, discussed with me the need to put some flesh on the bones of where SSDI might be sensibly reformed as insolvency loomed large in the 2014, the 2016 meeting out there at the process came together beautifully. As those of you that were part of that first portion of this, a very interesting and wide-ranging variety of perspectives come together in an advisory committee. I thought all hell was going to break loose when that committee met, and I was so pleased that it didn't work that way at all. There's a collective, substantive interest in fleshing out ideas that I continue to really bring scholarship with the several chapters commended in our book. And of all the darn things, something happened that in my 18 years of Congress I never saw. 1 year out, 1 year before the insolvency, our studies well underway. Congress transferred funds within the Social Security program, and the imminent insolvency of 2016 was solved in 2015. I served with John Boehner for all 18 years I was in Congress, and I think his cleaning the barn on the way out of his speakership, which took care of, among other things, his transfer, fixing Social Security's imminent SSDI's imminent insolvency, was his finest work during his entire run. But that doesn't alleviate for a second the need we have to continue to look at how we can make the nation's most important disability program more functional, work better, to serve the needs of those who need this program. It's the 21st century. How can we do things differently? How can we improve the system? And what a time to consider it. A full employment economy. We have the best opportunity ever presented, perhaps in our lifetimes, to really facilitate people getting back off the rolls and into work, if we can identify the barriers and make that transfer back into productive capacity as a participant in the workforce, we can do better. So these are really important concepts at this time to have this next chapter of effort. So I'm very pleased. Mike Murphy has done such a terrific job, along with all the people at the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, in advancing the program, not letting it sit on the shelf with that book, keeping ideas gestating. How do we now make the best of the pilot opportunities that we have still running through 2022? So these ideas further fleshed out in stage 2, they really, really matter. And I hope some of them will be pilots. So let me introduce those who will be presenting this morning. We put quite a bit of, again, diligent scholarship into further evaluation of their ideas discussed in Chapter 1, English Phase 1. And they're with us today. Jason Fiedler, Jason Seligman, David Staple, Jonathan Benjolm, David Mann, Joyce Manchester, Harold Krent, Jennifer Christian, Tom Wickheiser, Kim Burton, Gerald Gray, Glenn Sklar, and Mark Mayer. Would you please stand? And I'd like you to recognize these folks have put a lot of work into the thinking of everyone in the room understands the critical importance of this program, wants it to work better, and therefore Earl appreciates especially your extra effort of thinking and scholarship. I'm now going to turn the program over to my esteemed co-chair. Jim McCrery is someone with whom it was a pleasure to serve. Always a consummate gentleman, but more importantly, a very serious policy thinker, someone that made Congress better for his service in it. Please welcome Jim McCrery.
Thank you, Earl, and I would certainly be remiss if I didn't say what a pleasure it was to work with Earl Pomeroy, a Democrat, I'm a Republican. I was in the House almost 21 years, and at least on the Ways and Means Committee while I was on the committee for most of those years, we worked together, Democrats and Republicans, fairly well on some issues, including the disabilities issues. So it was always a pleasure to work with Earl, and he came to Congress with a wealth of knowledge that he graciously shared with the rest of us on the committee with respect to insurance issues and issues that certainly affected the disabilities community. So Earl, thanks for all your service in Congress and for being such a great colleague. I also want to thank everybody who's here, not just the people who are serving on the panel today, but all of you really have made this initiative a success. And I'm going to talk a little bit this morning, just a little bit, don't worry, about some of the successes this initiative has had. We're, all of us who've worked on this, and I know the staff who's really done a tremendous job on this initiative, we're really gratified by how this initiative has been received. Earl mentioned the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015, the Barn Cleaning Act. The headline of that, with respect to SSDI anyway, was that it was just meant to kick the can down the road. Just reallocate some of those revenues and we've solved that problem, we've kicked that can down the road. But what was less heralded was that that act also included some of this initiative's proposals, like expanding cooperative disability investigations and funding continuing disability reviews. Those are very important in making sure that program integrity is being maintained and the taxpayer dollars are being distributed to the right people. So that was in that act. In addition, several of this initiative's recommendations have been included in a number of other pieces of legislation from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. And that, I think, represents an endorsement of your work. So, again, pat yourself on the back and take some thanks for everything that you've done to make this a success. Apart from legislation, there are other proposals that have been put in place administratively. Probably the best example of this so far is the Retain project. That was started last year by the Department of Labor in conjunction with the Social Security Administration. And it's underway, testing ways to keep people in the workforce and preventing them from needing to trade a paycheck for a disability check. And that idea, Retain, didn't just come out of nowhere. It came from this initiative. It was a proposal by Dr. Jennifer Christian, Tom Wickhauser, and Kim Burton. So that's another success that we've had. Those same authors haven't quit. They are continuing to study, continuing to produce. They're going to follow up they followed up last month, I guess, with another paper on that subject. And Retain wasn't the only initiative that has been embraced administratively. The state of Maine enacted policy to make sure that employers could auto-enroll their employees in private disability insurance. Likewise, last December, the Department of Labor, the United States Department of Labor, issued a letter making it clear that all employers could do the same and be in compliance with federal law. That was part of a proposal by initiative authors David Bowell and Mark Meyer. They believed that could save SSDI a substantial amount by helping people access the services provided by private insurers. And while the successes that I've mentioned are certainly highlights, they aren't the only ideas embraced from the initiative. The President's last few budgets, for example, have proposals for testing other new ideas like temporary disability benefits and partial benefits. We hope that the administration and Congress will continue to work together to advance and test more ideas that come from this initiative and from your good work. So with that, I want to thank you again for everything that you've done. And now we're going to turn it over to our very impressive panel for discussion led by Mark.
Can folks hear me? Oh yeah, you can hear me. Thank you all so much for being here today. My name is Mark Boltline. I'm the Senior Vice President and Senior Policy Director at the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. And I've been lucky enough to be working on the McCrery-Pomeroy SSDI Solutions Initiative for the last few years. I'm excited to be joined by a very distinguished panel. I'm going to introduce them very quickly, then we're going to go right into a Q&A. You all can also ask questions. There are index cards that you should pick up at front. And you can write your question on that, and I'll then communicate them to the panel. If you don't have an index card and want to ask a question, pop your hand up. We have folks going around the room who can give you cards and pick up your questions. So let me introduce my panel, going this order. To my immediate left is Jamie Wilson. Jamie is a program examiner at OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, which really leads up a lot of their work in the disability space, both related to SSDI and SSI, as well as other policies. Before that, she worked at both CMS and HHS as an analyst. To her left is Jason Fichtner, who's Associate Director of the International Economics and Finance Program at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, the SICE school. Prior to that, he was a Senior Fellow for Gates Center. Prior to that, was an Acting Deputy Commissioner at Social Security Administration. To his left is one of the country's foremost experts in disability policy, David Stapleton. He's former director of the Center for Studying Disability Policy at Mathematica, and now is Associate Director at Boston's College for Retirement and Disability Research. I should mention that both Jason and David have papers both in our book, which is for sale on Amazon or outside for $20, and in the second phase of the initiative, which is free for now, so get it before we start charging you. Lastly, all the way to the left is TJ Sutcliffe, who serves on the staff of the Social Security Subcommittee of the Ways and Means Committee, where she helps Chairman Larson and others with their work in disability policy, among other subjects. Prior to that, TJ was Senior Director of Income and Housing Policy at the ARC, which is a group that advocates for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So please join me in welcoming our panel. So I want to get through a lot of questions, which means I'm going to limit each of you to 2 minutes in all of your answers. So I'm going to start with a question for all of you, and then we'll move on to individual. But my first question, broadly, is as policymakers are considering improvements to disability policy, what areas should they be looking at? And TJ and Jamie, what areas are the Ways and Means Committee and all be looking at in particular? So let me just go in order.
Okay, so is my working? Hello. So a priority of this administration has been to evaluate creative and effective strategies to improve disability and labor force participation. So that's really been a central focus of all 3 budgets. we have really kind of had the central focus that people who acquire a severe injury or illness should not permanently exit the labor force, but there should be supports in place. So in all 3 budgets, we have proposed to test new approaches through enhanced demonstration authority, including mandatory participation in those demonstrations from multiple simultaneous designs. As part of that would be an expert panel who would look at kind of the successful outcomes of those demonstrations and other research and make recommendations to program goals. Many of these ideas kind of came from SSDI solutions. In the absence of that demonstration authority, we have kind of turned our attention to existing authorities and really focused on early intervention, kind of before people apply for benefits and kind of retaining labor force attachment. We talked about retain, which is retaining employment and talent after injury and illness network. And we have successfully kind of launched that project in fiscal year 2018. So kind of within our budget proposal, as well as kind of the early intervention designs, is the idea that not one agency or one system can solve disability employment, but it really has to be a collaborative effort across government and across other systems.
Yeah, sure. Oh, good. Is this working? Yeah, great. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I should start by issuing the usual disclosure. I'm here today representing only myself and not any members of Congress. In addition, I would ask that my remarks be off the record for press purposes. So if you have been watching the work of the Social Security Subcommittee on the Ways and Means Committee, you know that we have held to date 3 hearings on Social Security. The first hearing focused on the importance of Social Security to middle-class workers and their families. The second hearing looked at specific potential benefit improvements to Social Security, including potential benefit improvements that could help workers with disabilities and their families. And then third, we held a hearing focused in on Chairman Larson's bill, the Social Security 2100 Act. And I think if you were listening to these hearings and have been looking at some of the work that the subcommittee and Chairman Larson has been leading over the last few months, there's a couple of themes that have emerged from that work. First, I think protecting and preserving Social Security benefits. Second, ensuring that Social Security applicants can access their benefits when they are eligible for them and they need them. And third, of course, strengthening and improving the system. Chairman Larson often talks about, and I think in his video message later, he's going to talk a little bit about the fact that Social Security is insurance. It's insurance that workers pay into with each and every paycheck, and it's vitally important that it be there for them, both in retirement or if a worker dies, as well as in the case of disability. So I'm happy to talk a little more about some of our specific work, but I'll pause now and let others continue.
All right, good action. I'll echo my colleagues' original comments. First, I also want to recognize Jason Sullivan, who wrote from I recognized earlier, but Jason was my co-author on the 2 papers for the project. So he's my partner in crime. So without him, I wouldn't be here, so thank you for all your help. What I want to add to this is sort of what Congress we should start thinking about is just rethink the framing in some ways of SSDI. For way too long, when I started looking at the program, Social Security disability insurance was considered basically an all-or-nothing proposition. Either you're disabled or you're not. It is not considered a work support program. And too often people would get on SSDI, we would forget about it. They get their insurance check, we would make sure they're taken care of, but we wouldn't do anything else to bring them back into the workforce. That was sort of the overall sort of theme. Various projects and pilots were tried along the way, but the culture of SSDI did not change. Various people are like on this panel, others are trying to change that, and we have made a lot of progress. I think that is one of the big things I've seen come out of this initiative, is we are now talking about how SSDI can work towards being a work support program to help people get work interventions before they get an SSDI, or when they get out, how do we help them stay there and get back to the labor force. That's sort of how I want to start thinking about the proposals we talk about and the experiments, is how do we help people stay attached to the labor force, maybe not leave in the first place, or do something like temporary or partial disability. So we realize that it's not an all or nothing, that disability can be fluid and dynamic. It's not thinking about it in a static way. That's the framing I would give when we talk again about proposals later on.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me to be here. This is good. I am going to focus on the disability determination process, because I think fundamental changes in that process need to be made in order to sort of maximize the success that all of these good efforts to improve employment outcomes for people with disabilities are striving to achieve. And the current process is based on the premise that somebody, an examiner or adjudicator, can get a whole bunch of information about somebody and compare it to some standards that SSA has developed and make a decision whether that person can participate in substantially gainful activity or not. And I think that is absurd in most cases. I think there probably are maybe 25% of cases where that works quite well, and people need to get benefits. But that's what the Social Security program, disability program, was originally kind of an early retirement program for people who had such severe medical conditions that they couldn't continue to work. I think for the rest of applicants, there's a different way. We need to get them to a place where we can provide them with temporary supports, probably cash benefits for some period, but also services, medical care that they need, maybe permanent help, but try to help them maximize their capacity to work. And if we don't change the process in that manner so that it can be used to funnel people into a system that's helping them use their capacity as opposed to paying them to not use their capacity, I think our success is going to be very limited. Other countries have already gone down this path. I think many of you probably know about what's going on in the UK. I think they've stumbled in many ways and had some problems. I think we can learn from that, but I also think we may have right now the luxury of time to really get into this and do it well.
Thanks. So, Jamie, I think not a lot of folks realize that a significant amount has already been done policy-wise, a lot administratively in the SSDI space. Can you talk a little bit about what's been done, what's been right? Feel free to liberally credit the SSDI Solutions Initiative.
I'll talk about what's been administratively done, and yeah, it has been within SSA and the disability determination process. It's really where a lot of the focus has been. I think, I'm not sure if it was really in the SSDI solution, but I think a huge accomplishment of the agency was updating its medical listings, or almost all of its medical listings, with the exception of musculoskeletal, which is in the process of being updated in its final rule. So that's a huge accomplishment. Most of those rules had now been updated for 20 or over 30 years, and so that in itself is huge. Kind of within that, there was also areas kind of in the medical evidence space that was in the previous administration. This kind of was a suggestion within the, part of it was the element within kind of SSDI solutions, which was kind of how we consider medical evidence, but also consider who gets to submit medical evidence. It seems very technical, but really when you determine disability, it is the evidence and the other medical evidence and other evidence that kind of makes that decision, kind of that lets us know whether or not they can function and how severe their conditions is and the prognosis of those conditions. And this is on the regulatory space, I think another large accomplishment was the kind of the hearing backlogs and the implementation of the CARES plan, kind of, and SSA's ability to kind of work down that CARES plan. Although it came through funding sources through kind of the BVA 2015, then continuing disability review backlog has also been worked on as well. And that has been done administratively, but that is kind of one of the most important program integrity tools that the agency has. So I think those are some of the areas they've worked on, but many others.
Thanks very much. TJ, I want to jump over to you. What's the Ways and Means Committee out in the disability space? And I'd also sort of like to add on, what kind of information are you really looking for in order to judge the effectiveness of various ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. So over the last few months, the Subcommittee of Social Security on Ways and Means has been doing work in a couple of different buckets. I think first and foremost, there's been a fair amount of activity looking at things that would strengthen our Social Security system broadly. So for example, Chairman Larson's Social Security 2100 Act includes a number of benefit enhancements that would benefit everyone, retirees, survivors, and people with disabilities. The committee has also been doing a fair amount of work in the area of service delivery and supporting the agency to have strong service delivery and customer service. That, of course, benefits everyone, including people who are considering applying or applying for disability insurance, or people who are attempting to return to work and are using some of the agency's work incentives. More specifically, in the disability space, I think there's a couple of areas of focus. Those have included reducing the hearings backlogs. I think there's been a lot of concern about those backlogs and looking to see the waiting times in particular now begin to come down. In addition, our members have been very interested in strengthening determinations at the DDS agencies. Just yesterday, Chairman Larson sent a letter to GAO asking GAO to look at the issue of medical consultants who are being contracted out by state DDS agencies and what the potential impact is on the accuracy and quality of the determination process. And in addition, our members have been very concerned about proposals that may create hurdles to individuals who are seeking to apply for benefits. In terms of what's helpful for policymakers to learn more about when considering potential changes to SSDI, I think there's probably a couple of things. One is certainly our members are very concerned and always very interested in knowing more about the impact of potential changes on current beneficiaries and on future beneficiaries. So I think research and information in that space is very, very helpful. The other thing I would say here is that I think generally the larger or more sweeping the potential policy change is, the more helpful it is to ensure that there's a very strong and robust evidence base for that proposal. Certainly there are a lot of promising practices and more research is needed.
So speaking of sweeping changes, David, you proposed and talked about integrating the current determination process with the new sort of employment services process. Can you talk a little bit about your idea?
Sure. Let me first give a shout out to my co-authors and my former colleagues in mathematics, Yanni Ben Shalom, who was introduced earlier, and David Cannon, who's not here today. So we proposed replacing the current disability determination service, which, for those of you who don't know, is the state offices that do the initial medical determinations with for Social Security, under Social Security support and guidance, with something we've called an employment eligibility service, or EES. So we're going from DDS to EDS. So what an EES is a state agency, again supported with federal dollars and under the oversight of the Social Security Administration and possibly other federal agencies as well, which would take applications from workers who have had to miss work for some period of time and need some assistance. And some of those workers would be found, through a triage process, be found eligible for SSDI right away. So those are the 25% I referred to earlier, who I think is reasonable to determine for medical evidence alone that they're never going to go back to work. But most of the rest, except those whose conditions were not sufficiently severe really to receive that, to be qualified for any support, would go into some sort of employment support system. What we have in mind is time-limited supports where they would get a temporary cash benefit for maybe 6 months, possibly longer. And it would also work with the counselor to set up a return-to-work plan, get them back into the most, help them maximize their capabilities and help them become self-sufficient. There are many other things you could do from that platform. We haven't proposed doing all of them, but I think it's that sort of platform that we really need in order to achieve much more success with employment for workers who have to stop working at least temporarily because of the medical problem.
So I want to follow up on that because that's a pretty fundamental change to the program. How do you envision implementing it without sort of putting undue risk or burden either on the taxpayer in terms of cost or the beneficiary in terms of lost benefits?
Sure. So happy to do that. So we, first, I think we have a little time now because of the favorable nature of the trust fund that we didn't have when we were thinking about this 3 years ago. And when we've talked to other people about it, this is the major concern. So we've come up, and this is in our current paper, and actually, I've got there's 2 pages that we've put out, which is available around various places if you want to pick it up. But we proposed a 3-phase approach to doing this. We think some of the efforts under the retain to build a health and work service are likely to be successful. We don't know when they'll be successful, and we can't really assume that they'll be successful. But hopefully, in a few years, we'll start to see some successful programs emerging. And we could prepare for that by thinking about, well, how could we offer additional support for those workers who go through those services but still aren't able to get back to work within the 3 to 5 months window. And that's where we can pilot some of the ideas for an EES, but just targeting those workers. If we can make that work, then we can expand that, maybe encourage other states to develop the health and work services, expand to private ones that already exist, because there are private insurers and workers' compensation insurers who have their own version of health and work service, some better than others. And then eventually, in the third phase, we would, having learned a lot in the process of the first 2 phases, ramp this up to the full phase and replace the current process. We keep the current process in place in the first 2 phases because we think a lot of workers will still need to use that process. And that's kind of a safety check. But eventually, I think we can get there.
Can I just give it like 45 seconds on this concept of time?
Absolutely.
Because the co-chairs mentioned the idea we have time. You mentioned as well, David. I want to make sure we don't have a false sense of time, and that we'll only do a false sense of security that now the trust fund is, the trust fund has a depletion date of 2052, that, oh, we've got 30 years, we can do this very slowly, take our time, we can go to a conference in 5 years and talk about that. Don't think that. We have to do this now. While the trust fund depletion is 2052, that's been improved by 20 years since last year. That 20-year improvement brought us 1 year improvement in the combined trust funds. The magnitude of the DI trust fund in dollars is dwarfed by the retirement trust fund, and dollars are going out. We have to do this now. We get into one recession, that 2052 is back down to 2030, 2028, 2025, maybe even earlier, depending on how severe a recession could be. We have to start thinking now about what these supports should be, which we're doing. We've got to start implementing pilots so we know what works, so that when the time comes, we can implement them. We don't have 30 years to do this. We have to start doing it.
So Jason, you just mentioned we start implementing pilots, which is along the line of what David was saying, what Jim just talked about. You just wrote a paper about pilots and demos, and as you know, they have sort of a mixed reputation in the past for working. What are some of the best lessons we've learned from past pilots and demos, and how can we apply it to do these pilots and demos better?
So my co-author, Jason Silverman, and I looked at a wide variety of fields that do demonstrations and pilots. And we sort of learned that some work, some don't. We tried to figure out what the best lessons were. So we give you 6 sort of general takeaways, 6 lessons we learned from this, our research in this. The first one is that research and demonstration projects often start out way too big and too complicated to be effectively designed and implemented. So people basically, they go into a candy store and they buy everything as opposed to trying to do things in small chunks. There's an old joke amongst those who invest in real estate that there are 3 most important things in real estate are location, location, location. For those of us that do experiments and designs, the 2 most important things are design, design, and design. So really to make sure we design this properly and do things small, not start too big. The second lesson is it takes years to design and conduct and evaluate research and demonstration projects. They're not things you can put together overnight. They do take a lot of time and serious thought. Third, as sort of noticed in general, you need to have a wide variety of input and build support from experts, stakeholders, especially those when there's changes involved in social welfare benefits. So bring people in early to start talking about how they should be designed, who they impact, who they affect, so that stakeholders are included in their support to build it and start the programs. The fourth is agencies should seek collaboration and partnership. This isn't just SSA's issue, it's also labor and others, so we need to work collaboratively amongst agencies, including federal and state. The fifth one is that a pilot is useful after a proof of concept, but before a full-blown project is begun. So again, sort of think about these in small steps, do a proof of concept, then do a pilot, and then do a full-blown experiment afterwards. And the last one I would leave you with, there's one global lesson that we learned, which is very important. I think it doesn't get talked about a lot, is that for demonstration projects to be successful, leadership matters. On Tuesday, I believe, Tuesday evening, the Senate voted to confirm Andrew Saul as the Social Security Commissioner. I believe that is the first vote the Senate has had on a commissioner in 11 years, since my former boss, Mike Ashley, was. We've had acting commissioners for the past several years. We now have new leadership, confirmed leadership. When we look at demonstration projects, really it takes a culture a culture that's supportive of research, a culture that's supportive of administration projects, a culture that's supportive of experimentation. So the Edison joke about if you failed 10,000 times for a light bulb, he didn't say he failed. He had 9,999 ways to learn that didn't work. We need to have a culture that allows for experimentation, learn from lessons, and then move forward and take those lessons and find those that do work. Leadership does matter, and that's what we need going forward.
So I want to jump off this and go back to you, Jamie, because the administration has proposed a number of pilots and is actually, as I understand it, implementing 2 of them already. Could you discuss what you're working on and what you propose?
So I had the opportunity to read Jason's paper, and I'm happy to say that we've taken a couple of his recommendations before we had them. One that we are in the pilot phase of retaining. So one of the pieces, and again, this was a recommendation from the agencies, it won't be idea, but to recommend kind of an 18-month pilot across 8 states. And we've talked a lot about retaining in this talk, but we actually haven't talked about what it actually is. So what we have taken from this proposal is kind of the successful promising practice from the state of Washington's workers' compensation system, and allow states to kind of innovate with their design model. And that includes kind of return to work care coordination, incentives for healthcare providers, as well as kind of engaging employers in that process and how to ensure that people kind of not just return to work, but they actually continue to maintain kind of that attachment, maybe assign different duties of their job, maybe have a flexible work schedule. So it is kind of bringing together healthcare as well as labor, and it's across 8 states. And then kind of the second phase will be those 8 states will actually compete for up to 5 grants, kind of up to, and those will be $20 million grants, excuse me, for full implementation, and kind of really trying to do those promising practices. But I would have to say that these are just the first try. So we're also trying kind of early intervention in a different population, which is kind of those who are currently not attached to the workforce. It may be more of the SSI population, but those who kind of maybe kind of approaching the welfare department in different other areas kind of for other types of support and giving them kind of the supports they need, but maybe too sick at this moment to kind of return to work. So kind of giving healthcare supports as well as employment supports. Other ideas that we've thought of in this kind of demonstration portfolio, I mean, we put together a set of ideas, but these are definitely not the ideas that are all out there. We're always open to new ideas. Would be kind of doing substance abuse disorder treatment, kind of, and mental health treatment with return to work services. We also put forward the idea of 4-time limited benefits, and say there's an idea that comes up a lot, but but would it actually work? I mean, there is a concern that it would actually induce injury as well and increase kind of the cost to the government. So that we put forward a number of ideas in that area. We're also looking at the state VR program as well. Currently, they serve people with the most severe disabilities, but is there ways to kind of carve out new program designs within state VR, kind of those with new temporary disabilities, who are just kind of learning how to be a person with a disability, with a back injury, and the labor force, and is there ways to kind of give them quick early intervention ideas, kind of the new line of business within VR. So those are some of the ideas. We have many others, and VR is
For those that don't know, VR is vocational rehabilitation. And I want to jump off that because, David, I know you've written a lot about voc rehab over the years. Largely now it's used as sort of a return to work effort. Do you think vocational rehabilitation could be useful as an early intervention tool?
Sure. I think VR agencies today do what they are being asked to do, which is serve the most severely disabled people first. And those tend to be people who've been out of work for a long time or never worked in their lives. And so that's where their effort has been. And in fact, until the 2014 Innovation Opportunity Act, we thought it wasn't even clear that they were allowed to help workers who still had jobs, who were still connected to the employer. Now they're allowed to, but it's still the case that the priorities are being put elsewhere under federal law. And despite that, there are agencies who have small but interesting efforts. I really like Alabama's RAVE program, Retain a Valuable Employee. I think RAVE is Retain for good acronym. And we don't know how successful they are, but they work with people who already have jobs and their employers to help keep them at work when they have medical problems. We see the vocational rehabilitation system as being an important partner within these EES systems that I talked about a few minutes ago. Some of the services that workers will need in order to get back to work are services that they provide now. So I think they would have an important role there. It's interesting too that CSAVR, the National Association of the VR Administrators and Executives, they actually had their own plan, which I think they put out in 2014, which is very similar to our EES proposal in many respects, conceptually very much the same. I think there are some significant differences, but they're eager to be involved. They would really like to be able to do this.
Great. And Jason, I'm going to jump to you next because one of the pilots you mentioned is about temporary benefits, which your first paper in our book, For Sale Outside for $20, is about temporary and partial disability benefits. Could you discuss a little about that idea and why you think it's a promising way forward?
So first off, the authors don't get a cut of my book, just so you know. One of the things that has concerned me historically about the disability insurance program is, again, it was basically considered static. You are allowed to do some work, substantially equal amount, you allowed to do a little bit, but basically the concept was either disabled or you're not. It wasn't very static, and once people got on the program, they generally did not come off. They stayed on the program. That was a concern of ours. We started looking at other sort of programs that started talking about disability. There was an allowance for partial. The Veterans Affairs has a partial system, for example, where someone might say, hey, just to give an example, you have a back injury, maybe you can work 20 hours a week, not 40. The SSDI program says you're disabled or you're not, so you can't work or you can. Which one is it? You can't do both. So that creates a perverse incentive for folks to basically claim the I and not go back on your work. The process takes so long. David mentioned, sometimes people spend 2 years waiting for determination. So you spend 2 years waiting for determination, and then you try, the government says, do you want to do a ticket to work or try to go back to work? And they say no. Why should they? You're trying to fool me. So we need to change the culture to realize that disability is more dynamic. People could be falling in and off disability. Some people with mental illness could work for a while, maybe need work support to stay attached to the labor force. Allowing that, then would allow for a different type of disability system, which will allow for temporary partial benefits. So one of the things we want to do with our pilot is to allow for a temporary program. It says we will basically speed the process of determination, but you get on the program for 2 years, and then we'll do a full examination after to see if you're able to go to work. We will allow partial. Instead of getting full benefits, you get 20%, 50%, and still has some attachment to labor force. It's above the SGA amount. We don't cancel your benefits. We allow you to stay attached to the labor force. For those of you who are labor economists, you realize that the longer people are attached to the labor force, the more their skills erode and the harder it is to get back to the labor force. That is even more dramatic for those with disabilities. So we need to keep them attached, and that's when we start thinking about the idea of a partial or temporary program.
Changing gears a little bit, TJ, last year the President signed Congress-passed legislation developed by the Ways and Means Committee to improve the representative payee process. Can you talk a little about that legislation and why you think it'll be helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. So the legislation that passed in the last Congress is called the Strengthening Protections for Social Security Beneficiaries Act. And that title is, I think, a fairly good summary of what the bill does to strengthen the representative payee program of the Social Security Administration. If there's anybody in the room who does not know what that program is, it allows the Social Security Administration, when it identifies an individual who's incapable of managing or directing the management of their Social Security benefits, the agency can identify and appoint an individual or an organization to support someone in managing those benefits. The legislation that passed in the last Congress was done very bipartisanly. It's a major achievement that strengthens the representative payee program in a number of ways. I will not go into all of the different provisions in the bill, but broadly it improves and strengthens the agency's ability to do oversight of both individual and organizational payees. It simplifies some of the paperwork and administration of the program, and it also improves the program to make it work better for beneficiaries. The program is very important, particularly in the work context, to the extent that there are Social Security disability beneficiaries who are attempting to return to work and who need support in order to make that work attempt successful or as successful as possible. And so having the right payee who is helping them to use their benefits to secure the resources or services they may need to attempt to work, to report earnings and wages so that the Social Security Administration can ensure that the individual is accessing those work incentives properly is really important. So it's important legislation, and our members are very proud of it.
Thanks. So I'm going to turn to some audience questions now. And, there are a lot, so I'm going to consolidate. But I have two questions, David, for you about how your proposal would work. And one sort of asks if you think this is going to supplant private disability insurance, which does a lot of this work for some population. The second asks what role you envision the physician's evaluation of a person's disability having in the process.
Sure. So I think for it to be practical, it needs to try to avoid supplanting private disability insurers and what they do, and better yet, to try to get them to do things differently. And we don't want the federal government picking up the tab for things that are now being covered by private disability insurers. That would just, be a budget issue. A lot of private disability insurers, workers' compensation insurers have good systems, they're good programs, and what I would like to see happen is have this new system be a way to assess what they're doing, keep track of the workers that are coming out there, and also feed information into the disability determination process. That's not a new idea. I know past commissioners have been interested in trying to work with the private disability insurers, and maybe there has even been some effort in this regard to get their information and simplify their own work as a result. So I see them as continuing to have a major role, but interacting more with the Social Security Administration. As for physicians, I think their diagnoses of very critical medical issues and what a person can do safely in terms of their activities on a regular basis are really, really important. And some allowances will be made on the basis of physician decisions. But I think it's more, they would be advisors and consulted and also asked to help the individual get the type of care that they need in order to get back to work.
So this question is for whomever wants to answer. It's a jump ball question. What do we think explains, there's been a big drop in the number of applicants, disability applicants, much larger than even you would expect from demographics. What do we think explains that, and to what degree, if any, do you think it's driven by the fact people aren't getting paper Social Security statements?
I'd be happy to take that one first. So Yanni and another colleague, Mike Anderson, and I are about to release a paper in the next few months where we've been looking at this and trying to better understand the implications of the Great Recession for awards and the extent to which that could be explaining the recent decline. And the idea here is that when a recession comes along, there are a lot of people get laid off, and some of them are people who already had conditions that might have qualified them for Social Security, but they had jobs, so why do that? So they were induced to apply. Now these same individuals, if the recession had stayed, we hadn't had a recession, the economy had stayed stable, might have applied later on because they were laid off, their condition got worse or something, and would have been coming on to the awards roles, SSDI roles in more recent years, right? And so it's this acceleration of awards to the early part of the recession, and now we're seeing the backside of that. And we actually think that that's accounting for a large share of the decline in awards now. We think there are some other things going on, but look for that paper hopefully by the time of the DRC meetings this summer, or the Social Security Retirement Disability Research Center meetings this summer. But we do think there are other things going on, but we think it's underappreciated the effect of the recession on the decline in awards during the more recent period.
Stay on DJ.
Yeah, so I'm happy to jump in here. I mean, this is a really important question and one that I think is of great interest to policymakers. We could probably spend a lot of time this morning, throwing out potential factors or talking about potential factors that may be playing a role, including the fact that the agency is no longer providing Social Security statements to people under the age of 60, so people may not even know about the disability benefits that they may be eligible for. But I think the reality is that at this point, it's really too soon to know for sure. The Social Security trustees and the actuaries are taking a very close look at this. We're working with the actuaries to learn more. It appears that there may be a number of factors at play here, and certainly really look forward to learning more about this area.
And I'll just add again, there are multiple factors, but I do think, again, the economy is a big part of it. We have a very, very low unemployment rate right now, so high employment, low inflation, and we do see in times of recession that those who have the margin are the first ones to lose their jobs, and then usually turning to the can't find employment to find work. They apply for disability insurance, which is why I cautioned about the idea of saying we have 30 years to fix this. I don't think we do. I think we're one step recession away from having a higher application rate, whether or not that leads to higher awards is different depending on how you do the scoring and how you administer the program. But I do think that we're going to see a tick up. And I do think that also shows that there was a good number of people who were on SSDI who could work if given the supports, and just couldn't find full employment. We had to find a way to help them. That's sort of why we're thinking about disability insurance and disability in general being more static, or sorry, more dynamic and not static.
I'll just add that prior to the SSDI solutions just starting, the trust fund was supposed to run out in 2016. After our book came out, it got extended to 2052. Take from that what you
I make one more comment on that. One of the implications of this work that Yanni and David and I have been doing is that the predictions in 2016 about the trust fund, or 2015 about the trust fund being exhausted in 2016 were too dire, and they were, I mean, everybody was making them, and I think we didn't understand at that time how the recession was both affecting awards then, but also how it was going to affect the reduction in awards later on, and that wasn't being taken into account. By the same token, however, I agree with Jason, we're making the same mistake the opposite way now. Awards have gone down a lot, and we think that's going to happen, forever in the future. It's not. This is a temporary, largely temporary thing because of what happened in the earlier recession.
This is what the economists gets to say. If you had 3 people doing archery and only one's an economist, the first one shoots wide left, the second one shoots wide right, the economist just stands up and says, bullseye. On average, we would have been on a bullseye. And I think that's the importance of the takeaway here is you don't want to overestimate or underestimate, but it shows that we sometimes do need to take a more cautious approach.
I have another question here, which really could be again for anyone. There's been a lot of talk in this panel and in our book and elsewhere about providing support to workers to stay in the workforce, but not a lot of talk about encouraging employers to hire disabled workers or retain them. Is the administration or Ways and Means or any of your research thinking about or working on how to help employers to retain disabled workers?
So I think that our work is focused on retention. I don't think we have a specific kind of hiring focus on any of our demonstrations at this time. We're aware of different proposals kind of for incentive in the insurance market, but I think there's a lot of areas where we really do want with the Retain project for engaging employers in this process, whether kind of, I think the state of Ohio is looking at the large industrial sectors and trying to help them and their medical, kind of large medical establishments in the area, as well as the insurance providers, kind of all gathering together and kind of as a team ensuring that that individual can stay in the labor force. I think that's a broader question and it's worth additional demonstration authority so we can test those ideas for engaging employers.
So I'm happy to hop in here. This is a really interesting question. I think probably part of what I can contribute to this conversation is to point out that in many ways the policy levers around this question often lie outside the jurisdiction of the Social Security Subcommittee. I attended a briefing a couple of days ago that was sponsored by the Urban Institute, and I know several of the panelists are here today. And I think there was a really helpful discussion about the fact that there's a very broad population of workers with short or long-term illnesses, partial or more severe disabilities, and that many of the services that they need to access or the gaps that exist or areas that need to be strengthened and expanded lie with agencies like the Department of Labor or the Department Department of Education that operates the vocational rehabilitation programs. So to the extent that that's helpful to think about including in this early intervention space, wanted to add that to the conversation.
And I'll add one more thing, it also goes full circle about the role for private disability insurance, because someone asked the question earlier whether or not we're ready to plant it. And there are other proposals out there that would take a more integrated look at private disability insurance, and basically, even though the M word's a bad word, mandate employers provide private disability insurance and make that be the first year or 2 years of disability insurance coverage before someone could go on to public SSDI. And that would get employers more involved in helping retain workers, because they would not have an incentive by lowering their costs to keep an employee attached to them as the employer-employee relationship, and keep them attached to the workforce, as opposed to saying we're just giving up on them and putting them onto the public system. So there are ways to start about how to better integrate private disability insurance with our program.
Yes. So I mentioned earlier this AWARE program, the RAVE program in the state of Alabama's Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. And I think it's an example of a program that is helping employers. And it came about because all of our agencies have employer relation departments, because they're trying to find placements for their clients. And what they realized in Alabama was that they could help some particular clients and actually build the relationships that they needed by helping them retain their own employees, right? And so just a change in the funding for PR and a change in their mandate to actually do that might be one way to go.
I want to also point out in framing, none of us here are talking about policies in the context of trying to do solvency. Solvency is important, but we're here trying to help people get better dignity by staying attached to the workforce. There's a lot of human capital that's wasted when they're not employed. People lose dignity when they're not employed. A paycheck's a lot better than a handout. For those that can stay attached to the workforce, we're trying to help them do that. And that's really important, because I think we all sort of agree with we can help, we should.
So we have 3 minutes left, so I'm going to do some flash round questions based on these, which means that instead of being like 2 minutes, you'll live to 30 seconds. But we had a couple questions about technology, about AI, about automation. To what extent do you think better technology can help us either improve the determination process or improve the back-to-work process?
I'll take the first part of that technology. I really think the technology and modernizing SSA systems will be kind of the vehicle for making future policy improvements, particularly to the disability determination process. So as we're kind of thinking about policy improvements at the DDS, it's really going to be the implementation of the disability case processing system. And
I would agree with that, and just also add that technology, not just in the process of determination, but for people's ability to do employment. You can now have people working remotely that can use voice recognition software as opposed to typing. There are a lot of things that we can do that will make people more productive in general, also help people stay attached to the workforce with disabilities.
I think AI has the possibility of replacing most of what disability examinators and adjudicators do. They can, and not leaving after they've been doing it for a few years as well. And it's just a tremendous ability to do what the current process does. But even if they do that, it will still need to be fixed, because they're not going to help people get back to work.
So I'm not going to comment on AI, but I will add that obviously the Social Security Administration's IT and modernization projects are critically important.
Okay, this is a combination last question, closing statements, and you each have 1 minute. The last question, if you want to answer, is how important is SSA's funding to be able to operationalize either what they're doing now or what they need to be doing disability? And then feel free to merge that into your closing statement.
I'm happy to start. Obviously, adequate funding for the Social Security Administration's operating budget is critical to ensure that the agency can deliver strong customer service and have strong service delivery. We've been very pleased to see that the House Appropriations Committee has recommended actually an additional $300 million for the Social Security Administration's operating budget in 2020, and we're hoping that that moves forward into the final bill.
So, echoing something Jason said earlier, I think leadership at SSA is extremely important, and it needs to be persistent over long periods of time. And part of that, I think, is budgetary. What's happened in the past, I think, is because there have been times where administrative funds are very lean. Everything goes into supporting the current process and trying to make it work better. and that just set aside stuff needed to improve the program in the future. I'd like to see a dedicated budget for that, and also somebody who's in charge of that over a long period of time.
So since Dave stole my closing remarks, I'll just add that, I totally agree with what he said. And what I would focus on is you can't just throw money at a problem. One of the things I think you need to do is have metrics, and let the building person go last about budget and metrics. But the agency does need more money. They've been getting more money, and I do think Congress has done a good job sitting down with the agency and saying, what do we get for our money? Show us, and hold the agency responsible. Again, when I was there, Mike Astrew was commissioner, we went up to Congress and said, here's the money we need, here's what you'll get for it, here are the metrics that was accountable, and we'll come show you how we've made that. That way there's a trust built and you show what you're getting for money. And again, a dedicated source of revenue, whether it's coming from the trust fund, the payroll taxes paid and go into IT modernization, or some sort of research budget that comes out of that. Have someone in charge for long-term consistency, but have a metric in place to show that the money's being wisely spent, and builds trust amongst the appropriators and the authorizers, Congress, and the public. I think it's very important.
So I am not here to represent policy officials. In the president's budget, we have recommended continued consistent funding for the Social Security Administration, including for their research and demonstration budget. We've had consistent, strong funding. We thank Congress for that, and that really allows us to kind of further this research and early intervention. And part of this year's research budget is a recommendation for doing additional research on how we can do metrics across disability projects across the government, so we can measure kind of consistent populations in metrics.
Great. Well, everyone please join me in thanking our panel. So in just 1 minute, we're going to have a video from Chairman John Larson, who's the chairman of the Social Security Subcommittee for the Ways and Means Committee. He's very sorry he couldn't be here in person, but he wants to address all of you. So please welcome via video, Chairman Larson.
Good morning. I wish I could be with you in person, but it's my great pleasure to join you by video. I'd like to thank my former colleagues, Earl Pomeroy and Jim McCrery, who have brought their expertise as former chairs of the Social Security Subcommittee, the House Committee on Ways and Means, to leading the SSDI Solutions Initiative. I also want to thank the committee for a responsible federal budget for convening and operating the initiative. And finally, I want to thank all the authors of the 7 papers that are being written as part of this project. I congratulate all of you on this initiative. We know that Americans care deeply about Social Security. It's a program that everybody recognizes as the nation's premier insurance program. That's why the deduction on your payroll is called FICA, for Federal Insurance Contribution Act. Whose contribution? Yours. This is the working Americans' guarantee that they've earned. Nowhere on the private insurance market can you find a plan like Social Security that offers a pension plan, disability insurance, and life insurance for spouses and dependents. This is particularly true when it comes to disability insurance. You could be working at any time and suddenly you have a life-changing disability. Thank goodness you've been paying into Social Security. And whether you're 25 or 35 or 45, if you have a severe disability, Social Security disability insurance will be there to help you survive. Now, if you didn't have Social Security, what would you do? 2/3 of workers don't have any kind of private long-term disability insurance from their employer. And according to the Federal Reserve Board, 4 in 10 adults can't even come up with even $400 to cover an unexpected expense, much less to pay the bills if they can't work to support themselves due to a severe disability. The reality is that when you're disabled or retired, Social Security is the majority of income for most beneficiaries, and it's the only source of income for over 1 in 3 disabled beneficiaries. My major focus as chair of the Social Security Committee is on protecting and strengthening Social Security so it will be there for all Americans when they need it. It's why it's important that we combine both SSDI and old age and retirement together. As a Congress, we haven't made improvements to Social Security since 1983. We haven't expanded it for over 50 years. As a Congress, we must also act to prevent a 25% benefit cut come 2035. What I found is that most Americans care about is solutions. What they despise the most about Congress is the dysfunction they normally see. When they see people going to their respective corners and unwilling to get anything done. That's why I've introduced the Social Security 2100 Act. The Social Security 2100 Act will strengthen this guarantee and allow seniors and people with disabilities to live with dignity by providing real benefits for them. It establishes a minimum benefit for Social Security that's 125% above the poverty level, lifting more than 5 million people currently out of poverty, and ensuring that no one who has worked and paid into Social Security will live in poverty. It also takes into account the actual needs of beneficiaries when it comes to cost of living adjustments, or the COLA. The Social Security 2100 Act implements COLA that has been endorsed by the AARP. Beneficiaries will also receive an across-the-board 2% benefit increase, giving them a modest but necessary boost. Finally, we know from surveys by groups like the National Academy of Social Insurance that Americans are willing to pay a little bit more to strengthen Social Security. With the Social Security 2100 Act, the average working American would only have to pay 50 cents per week more each year. This is a doable solution. I congratulate all of you for your focus on solutions. Social Security is one of our greatest American programs. It's so important that you are bringing forward your expertise and your ideas. Again, I congratulate and thank you for your work on the SSDI Solutions Initiative.
That's okay. I just want to thank again Chairman Larson, and I'll be brief for our last portion of the program. I want to welcome back to the stage our co-chairs, as well as Senator Cassidy. If our co-chairs will introduce and moderate a discussion with Senator Cassidy.
Hey, Jim.
It's a pleasure. There we go. It's a pleasure for me to be able to introduce to you this morning a very distinguished guest and a friend of mine from my home state of Louisiana, Bill Cassidy, Dr. Bill Cassidy, Senator Bill Cassidy. He is a physician. For those of you who might have had the pleasure to work with him and his staff, you know that he is a very serious-minded, conscientious, hard-working legislator. One of the best that I've had the pleasure to work with in 30 years of working with senators and House members here on Capitol Hill. Bill Cassidy, I think, putting this as delicately as I can, is an exception to what one might normally expect from senators in terms of their willingness to delve into the details of policy and become somewhat expert themselves. So with that brief introduction, Senator Cassidy, welcome. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to rebut anything that I've said in just a second, but Earl and I are going to ask you some questions regarding SSDI, and I'm going to kick it off by...
Can I say something real quickly?
You may.
First, when I'm a doctor, when I was a younger doctor, the patient would say, "You look too young to be my doctor." At some point, they begin to say I look distinguished. And somehow I didn't feel good about that distinguished. So when you say distinguished, I'm thinking me and Larson look about the same when it comes to our white hair. And lastly, your subtle dig about senators is clearly the dig of a member who spent his whole life in the House. Yes, I know.
You mentioned, and I mentioned, that you're a physician. So the first question to you is, you're just one of 3 physicians, I believe, in the United States Senate. How has your work in medicine informed your views on disability? And can you think of just a few, 2 or 3 important changes that you might suggest to improve the situation for workers with disabilities?
So my medical practice was in the Louisiana Charity Hospital System. So the folks I treated were uninsured or on Medicaid, which is to say poorly insured, so they could not be seen elsewhere. And I spent 25 years there. And these folks, if they could not work, they were in trouble because they had to work in order to pay their bills. So, but they would get hurt and have a short-term disability. And then either, if they were able to finally get, when I say short-term, it might be as long as a year. Think of a terrible car wreck for which there was an extended rehab. But at the end of that rehab, they are back to where they can function. So they're at the point where they have that security blanket of knowing I finally got on disability. Do I release the security blanket? Or not? Now, there's a lot of data out there that people feel better when they work. They do better when they work. They're less likely to abuse drugs if they work. The old adage, idle hands are a devil's workshop. So you want them to go back to work, but they got that security blanket. And I'm not saying how to do it any different. The second thing you know, it took them a year to get on disability. But these folks have a cash flow problem. And so, so if they are disabled for 3 months, they may have to move out of their home. So if you could have a more rapidly got onto, but for sure you're going to get off, because that car wreck that broke their femur means that they cannot climb a ladder to do painting. Therefore, they are disabled. We need to have that short-term disability. Last thing I will say, and Katie Rudis is somewhere in the audience. She was my staff person. She's a staff advocate, Katie. Katie, she's doing all my work on this issue. In the private sector, there is short-term disability, so-called, for pregnancy. What a great idea. We need to acknowledge that if someone is told by her physician to stay off her feet, then she is disabled. And if she has a C-section, or even if not, there is a postpartum period when she is disabled, so to speak, cannot work. But then she should be able to go back to work. Our policy, I would love to have something, and we're working on this, by the way, in which you effectively have the same thing the private sector has, which is a short-term disability, knowing that the condition does make you disabled, so to speak, not as we traditionally think of, but as we should think of, and then after that you go back to work. So as a physician, all that informs me.
Earl? Senator, it's good to see you again. There are folks, and he will be a familiar face to all of you, who's at the podium a lot. Now, there are folks for whom getting to the podium is the end goal. With the senator, it's because he's advanced an interesting idea and is in the thick of things, and that's how he gets to the podium. That's the right way to do it, and congratulations. We look at our old House colleagues, they go over to the other chamber, and they, especially for some of them, we do them when. And that's how I think, Senator, congratulations on your sparkly career. I love the way you really have identified with the particular circumstances that people are trying to wrestle their way through. Too often we look at things on a macro level without really drilling down into what is at stake with an individual claim, for example. One of the things we've learned through the McCrery-Pomeroy initiative project is the role of pilots. We've got a big old system here. As the chairman mentioned in the previous video, 2/3 of workers, it's the only thing they've got. Surely we can improve and change its functionality in the 21st century. we've got to be damn careful about it. And there comes the role of pilots, authorized under the 2015 legislation through 2022. I'm thinking about one of the, Jason Victor says we've got to act, we've got to have a sense of emergency. One of the things I feel a little urgency about is I want a longer period for pilots. And I'm wondering what your thoughts might be about that.
Totally agree with you. And it's one thing, right now we have record low unemployment for the disabled. We got a hot economy. It's really working well. And it's able to give people that security that they can leave that sure check and go into a better paying job. But we know that going on disability is countercyclical to the economy. And there's good academic literature. The economy goes down, more people go on disability. The economy goes up, fewer people go on disability. Well, we got a hot economy, but it won't stay hot forever. Sooner or later, Earl's party will take back over. Just teasing. So that said, I think that we need to not have a false sense of complacency that things are going well, but we have to have these pilot programs so that even when there's that inevitable cycle that goes down, that we will continue these beyond 2022 to make sure there's attachment to the workplace that persists.
Another thing that Jason was really strident about in our panel discussion before he arrived was that even though the Bipartisan Policy Act of 2015, by reallocating the revenues, payroll tax revenues, extended the life of the SSDI trust fund to 2052, Jason said we shouldn't be comforted by that we have 3 decades before we really have to do anything. We should be acting now. Do you agree with that? And do you think there's a chance that the Congress will act in the near term rather than wait 2.5 decades until there's another crisis?
It is with humility that I speak about this topic in front of 2 experts. So I say that knowing that you may say, no, Bill, you got it wrong. But it's my understanding that SSDI was bailed out, if you will, by taking dollars from traditional Social Security and plugging it in there. Now, traditional Social Security is going bankrupt. So wouldn't it be great if we could reverse that flow? Because as Larson mentioned on the video, by law, it's a pay-as-you-go system, and so if traditional Medicare goes bankrupt, there's a 25% cut to current beneficiaries and the future beneficiaries. So we have to recognize that the shoring up here took from there. Now granted, this pool is a lot bigger, and this amount of money was a relatively small percent relative to this big pool. But the only way you're going to solve the big problem is to solve it on the margin. Unless you're willing to raise payroll taxes, which are dramatically, which is regressive, and we may have to do, but you'd like to minimize that because it is regressive. You want every other margin to be working for you. So I do think that we need to address this now as part of the kind of sense of urgency that we should be using to bringing to addressing the problems of traditional Medicare, traditional Social Security.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons for the existence of this initiative is to provide ideas to policymakers that can perhaps be tested over time and then implemented before we have another crisis in terms of the funding. So, yes, we all would love to have reforms for the bigger Social Security system, but there are perhaps some things we hope that can be done in the near term for just SSDI, for the disability system, that could help avert a future crisis.
Yes, I agree.
Senator, thanks. You wrote yesterday, I think it was, we have something today we haven't had for a while, Commissioner of Social Security. I would expect Commissioner Saul may think I'm about to steer an ocean liner here. It's not going to be quick and dramatic turns. But we really haven't had a chance to visit with the Commissioner, know him well, or know him well. What are your thoughts, and what do you think might be the initiatives of his leadership?
If leadership matters, it's important to have a leader. But if leadership matters, it's important to have someone with a proven track record of success. And he took the federal thrift board and turned it around, making decisions that were important and positive for their IT system, for example, which is part of what is required for traditional Social Security. Making decisions regarding their financial positions. Oh my gosh, isn't that an important thing? So I think it's important to have a leader, but it's also important to have a good leader, and I think Andrew Saul fills both.
Senator Cassidy, anything that you know of that the Senate Finance Committee is working on in the area of disabilities that you have particular interest in?
Well, so yes, but perhaps not to your point of solvency. We're working on paid family leave. Now, there's different ways to finance that. The Rubio proposal is that you would borrow against your future earnings from traditional Social Security. I don't care for that proposal. I go back to the patients I treated in the public hospital system. They are never going to pay it back, but they are the ones who are going to need that future income even more. And somebody explained to me recently, which is a very valid point, if you borrow 5K now and pay it back in 10 years, the future value of 5K is really 10K. Now, or else you're actually getting a loan which you're not completely paying for. So I don't care for the financing mechanism of the Rubio proposal as one example. In terms of disability, one of the thoughts we had, I'm not sure we're going to go there, but I think it's important to entertain it, is to go back over what I spoke at the beginning. There should be short-term disability. We should modernize SSDI as the private sector now sells policies which are for short-term disability. And if intuitively you know that above a certain income level people are paying for disability policies, and below a certain level they're relying on Social Security, they don't have the marginal cash to pay for a disability policy. Think somebody working in a convenience store behind the counter. Our Social Security should be just as adaptable as that private sector policy for short-term disability, because if anything, the lower income are more vulnerable to perturbations in their health than those who are in the upper income level.
Senator, last question. Social Security tended to polarize Congress before polarization was cool. Now, they're polarized on everything now. But still, the work has got to move forward. You are constantly searching for policy partners. I've seen you work with Republicans. I've seen you work with Democrats. How do you assess your chances at finding partners to cobble together some policy responses, given your very interesting thinking and demonstrated expertise on this issue?
Well, so let me just go to healthcare first, because it's another third rail, right? Believe me, I know it's a third rail. I know it's a third rail. But we probably have like 15 bills right now, of which is I am working with Democrats on very substantial changes, and these 15 bills are substantial, and they're going forward. And my Democrats will take it to the House Democrats, and I will take it to the House Republicans, and I think we can get it through. So, and I'll also say, even on Graham Cassidy, which was very polarizing, I'm now seeing chunks of it that the left are talking about incorporating in some of their proposals. So what lessons did I learn from Graham Cassidy now that I see people taking chunks of it? I learned that I needed more time to socialize it, to make it seem less threatening. And when I'm hearing somebody give a soliloquy about a problem, implicitly criticizing my proposal, and knowing that my proposal specifically addresses that problem, it tells me my failure was to get to them early enough to find out what they considered a problem. We agree upon that. This is how we can address it. So take those lessons to social. If I go to one of my colleagues and I say, I worked with the uninsured for 25 years. Intuitively, you know, below a certain income level, folks are less likely to be able to afford disability. But they have a short-term disability, not a long-term. Can we work on a policy which gives them a short-term disability but then gets them off? I will find a taker. So on and on. And I always prefer to remain optimistic, because unless you're optimistic, nothing ever happens. But if we start with the little and grow to the bigger, maybe ultimately we get to where we need to be.
Very good. Mike Murphy, are we wrapping this up?
Yep, that's it. Again, it's working, I guess, once again, so I'll speak loud just on behalf of us. Thank you so much, Senator Cassidy. Thank you, Senator Cassidy. Please join me in thanking the Senator, thanking our co-chairs. And once again, thanking all of you in our panelists for being here. Thank you very much. Take care.